When it comes to everything fantasy football, you have to ask one question. Don't you deserve a fighting chance? And now, welcome to Fighting Chance Live with your hosts, Kevin Tompkins and Scott Fishbowl 9 winner, Gary Haddow.
Welcome in to Fighting Chance. Gary's already laughing here.
Always, man. Always just so happy to be here.
I know you are. Is it the hat or what? Because you're wearing the same hat you had on the potathon for Scott Fishbowl.
Well, given it's the Scott Fishbowl crown, it's the official one that my wife made me. She even tweeted about it, being like, "This is how much I love my husband. You guys will see tomorrow." And she went ahead and made this badass crown. I wanted it to be very reminiscent of what is their name? Twilight Sparkle from My Little Pony division. That's my that is now my pony from My Little Pony division for Scott Fishbowl.
Oh dear God! All right, well, that's all you. That's your department. I have no affiliation with My Little Pony, and we'll just go with that. But yeah, welcome into Fighting Chance Live, everybody. I'm Kevin Tompkins, Scott Fishbowl 9 champion Gary Haddow in the house, and we've got a great guest. We've got Sam Wallace from rotoviz.com. Sam, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you guys so much for having me on. And Gary, by the way, I love the crown. This is perfect. Yes. It's really setting the mood, and yeah, I think it's very timely.
Would have been awkward if you said you hated it.
That's true. I'll save that for off air.
Yeah. I will pass along the praise to my wife.
That's awesome. Well, yeah. So Sam, like I said, appreciate you having you on, and tell us where we can find you on the World Wide Web. Anything you're doing, Twitter handle, you name it. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Pretty simplistic. As you mentioned, I write for RotoViz currently, and my Twitter handle is listed right there below my name at @swallace_ff. And yeah, just kind of churning out some content as often as I can here. And in my first ever Scott Fishbowl draft, so this has been a really exciting couple of days to get, to dive into this for the first time. And it's been a lot of fun. So there's a lot of cool things happening right now.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Absolutely. So being into your first Scott Fishbowl, how are you approaching your draft so far? Like, what division are you in? What pick did you have? And how are you kind of going about everything as, we're in day 3 of drafts here?
Yeah. So my league right now is in the 10th round. I'm in the Pokemon division, and I had pick 103. So I was really happy with my pick selection, that landing spot. So I just led off with Patrick Mahomes, and I've just been kind of taking it a pick at a time. I feel pretty good about some of my early picks, so we're about halfway through. And now, when the depth starts being built along the bench, I think that's when it's going to really get interesting to see what type of value that I can find a little bit later on. It's been pretty normal. I think I haven't really seen any too many big surprises, I don't think, from anybody in the draft. But yeah, just every once in a while when I get my pick, I kind of do a little bit more research. I didn't do a ton of prep because I didn't really know exactly what to do for it. So just having some fun along the way, and we'll kind of see how it goes.
With your roster construction, have you been going RB heavy, been balanced, been wide receiver heavy? Where are you at there?
Pretty balanced. So I'm through the 10th round right now, and I'm sitting with 2 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 4 wide receivers, and a tight end. So I didn't grab my tight end until the 8th round, but I had my second quarterback by the 4th. So pretty balanced. I wanted to make sure I left with two good quarterbacks, and then we'll kind of see how the bench fills out from here.
Very cool. I feel like 7 to 10 makes or breaks your draft, and then after 10, it's just like everybody's just going to do whatever the hell they want and just go for their guys and whatnot. So it's always.
I'm going to write down any pieces of advice you have because obviously it worked. So I'm taking notes over here on the side.
Got pretty lucky. We'll see if I can pull it out again. I'm pretty happy with my draft so far. So I've been going pretty running back heavy and managed to get Josh Allen, which I've never draft in this format, but. Other than last year, apparently, and Tom Brady to kind of balance each other out. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I went pretty. I am very. Usually I'm wide receiver heavy. I am just going the other way and just hammering running backs wherever I can. I think as it stands now, on the latest in the entire tournament in drafting a tight end. I don't know if that's changed since this afternoon, but I got Jarwin in the 13th, and that was the first tight end, and we'll see what happens there because it's pretty much a wasteland right now.
Yep.
For the position. So yeah, we're one of the fastest drafts for the Power Rangers. So
which makes sense because they're the Power Rangers.
It's true.
You're damn right. So, Yeah, we got a great group and we're going pretty fast and yeah, having a lot of fun. That's what it's all about. And yeah, I'll just say this draft is going way better than last year's draft.
I think your draft last year went okay. You just lost Roethlisberger very, very quickly.
I got a game out of Antonio Brown. What are you talking about?
That's true. You did get one.
Yeah, those my first 3 picks out at 103 last year were McCaffrey, Gurley, and Antonio Brown. And yeah, and then I had Roethlisberger, and then I had Stafford, who went down. So yeah, my cat is actually trying to join this podcast right now. He's
fantastic.
Welcome him in.
Get him in here.
Love all animals here.
Oh boy, this is not working out too well.
It's okay.
He was resisting, but
We're doing it live. It's okay.
hey, buddy.
What's his name?
This is Spencer.
Hi, Spencer.
He's a dog cat. He acts like a dog. He barks like a dog sometimes. So he's out. But yeah, I love that cat. We want a dog, but we just got to get a fence. We got to get a closed-in fence for it. So in time.
It's North Dakota. You just let him roam around.
Yeah.
So for anybody not, doesn't know what we're doing today, we're doing Plant Your Flag, guys. So we wanted to bring Sam on, like he said, from RotoViz. And real quick, before we actually go into our guys that we're all about, we got some breaking news potentially. I'm not too sure how much breaking news it is, but Raheem Mostert has asked for a trade away from the 49ers. He's frustrated that his contract extension, which came in 2019, is that he was based on being a special teams player. And now that talks have kind of stalled and everything before was about him being a special teams guy. Now he's kind of their de facto RB1. And so he wants a trade. What are your guys' reactions? I will try and condense mine, but I'll let you guys go first.
Kevin, Nick, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I really just think it's to get something commensurate with. I believe Tevin Coleman's making about $4 million. I don't think it's really anything but just getting a little bump. I don't think he's going to get traded. I actually tweeted something like he's going to go to the Eagles, isn't he? Because that would be just the most Eagles move for them to make to acquire Raheem Mostert, or maybe Jacksonville or Tampa's popular too. But I can't see him getting dealt. I think he's just going to get a bump in pay, and then that's that, and it just dies off.
Yep, I'm in the exact same boat. The latest news I saw was that he just wanted his deal to be equal to, what Tevin Coleman is making on the team right now, which isn't a lot of money at all. So it's not like he's asking for an outlandish amount of money, and he really doesn't have any leverage at this point in his career. He's coming off of a great finish to a great season. But yeah, like you said, I think they throw him a little bit of money. He's valuable to that team. And I think that'll be that. I don't think he's going to go anywhere.
Completely agree. Actually, I think that anybody that is overreaching on Coleman, I don't expect anything to happen. I still think that Coleman is nowhere near the back that Raheem is, at least from what we saw last year. So hopefully he stays put, because I absolutely love him. He was in this episode and no longer is, because I took him out just because I got a little tiny bit nervous. But I still love you, Raheem Mostert. And I hope you're there, because, goddamn, you're fun to watch play.
Not a Niners fan at all.
No. All right, so we're going to jump in. We're just going to go by position. And I think it's just easiest if we're actually I'm going to jump ahead. I want to actually have Sam take us out here with quarterbacks. And so, Sam, who's your quarterback that you're planting your flag in? And we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, he's a guy I've been kind of looking at for a little while. I think especially more in super flex leagues. I think he's got a lot of, real sneaky value right now that I think is going to go up quite a bit by this time next year. And that's Daniel Jones for the New York Giants. One thing I kind of threw in right away was kind of get the bad news out of the way for him first. In 13 games last season, he threw 12 interceptions. Okay, about 1 per game. Not terrible for a rookie, but he lost 11 fumbles. That was a huge, huge issue for him last year, just consistently turning the ball over. I mean, he was sacked 38 times as well. So, the dude is just kind of getting beat up and struggled. But with the struggles, I think, came a lot of really unique optimism, I think, moving forward. I'm really a big fan of his kind of quiet rushing floor that he offers. He finished as the QB7 in rushing last year overall, despite only playing 13 games. Yeah. And then actually, shout out to Curtis Patrick over at RotoViz. He dug up this stat that I stole from one of his articles that he tabbed as Daniel Jones as kind of being a dynasty buy, especially in superflex leagues. So here's what he pulled out. So since 1970, only 12 rookie quarterbacks have ever posted a game of 300 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. So only 12 have ever done it. Daniel Jones did it 3 times last year. I mean, so he flashed that upside a number of times. He broke 30 points 4 different times last year. I mean, so, we saw the bad, obviously, with the turnovers, but with so much good to come out of what he did last year, I think bodes really well moving forward.
Yeah.
There's some talk that he's obviously working on ball control. That should be an obvious. That really shouldn't be news. But apparently he's put on a little bit of weight. He's trying to bulk up a little bit more, kind of just become a little bit more of a physical, I don't want to say a physical runner, but, just to hold up a little bit better. And then you just look at the offense that he has. I mean, he's got probably quietly one of the better offensive arsenals if everyone's healthy. He's got a great trio of wide receivers, probably, one of the best running backs in football. I think Evan Ingram's going to be a big part of that. I just need him to stay healthy as well. But yeah, his current ADP in best ball right now is QB 14. I think he easily finishes as a QB 1. I mean, that's only moving up 2 spots. But yeah, Daniel Jones for me, I'm expecting big things this year.
Yeah, it's interesting this time of year. We talked about Scott Fish and a lot of other stuff that's going on where maybe there's over penalization for interceptions. And once you get rid of that and you really just drop to the -2, like he had interceptions, but every rookie quarterback does, like you said.
Right.
And ultimately, like we saw the worst offensive position, like skill players that he played with last year because Ingram was hurt, Barkley was hurt. There was never the 5 of them, and when they're all together, I mean, it's going to be awesome to see. Plus, like they're in a division that nothing terrifies me from a defensive point of view. I mean, the Eagles secondary is pretty bad. We'll see with the Redskins; they might have a better defense, and then the Cowboys traded away Byron Jones, and so who knows what their secondary is even going to be like. So
yeah, I mean, he trashed bad teams last year, which is what you want to see. And if he can even be competent against above average defenses, I think he's just going to smash next year.
Yeah, he was just outside of the top 12 in points per game as a rookie. That's someone that's definitely trending up. Like Gary said, I mean, the only thing that really scares me out of that division is maybe the Cowboys and maybe also that Redskins pass rush. But other than that, I think Daniel Jones, with everybody healthy, with Ingram, God forbid, full season from Barkley, Tate, Shepard, Slayton, all those guys, even, Deion Lewis, if they let him get a little bit of run. He's got a great complement of guys around him. There's no reason why in a full season with expected improvement, he can't be a top 12 guy.
Yep, I agree. And I think, his ADP sitting at QB 14 right now is like just depressed enough where you can still get him at a value. I mean, I could see him being, I don't know if this is hot takey or not. I mean, but like in the top 7, maybe of quarterbacks drafted next year. Yeah. I mean, once you kind of get past the elite guys of, Mahomes and Lamar and things like that, he could very much cement himself into that second tier of mid QB ones.
Which is hilarious to think because how many people were just shitting on that pick, like taking him at 6 when you could have got him later, you could have got him in the second round, all that stuff. And here we are, and your first year to second year as a QB tends to be your biggest progression.
Yep.
And if he makes any sort of that jump and he reduces the fumbles, like you said, I know that they've obviously made very concerted effort to reduce that. Everything changes. Even just having a healthy Barkley, like that really does make a difference. And all of a sudden, I completely agree. We definitely, I think, will be seeing him inside the top 12 next year for sure.
Absolutely.
Kevin, you want to jump in with staff?
Yeah. So my plant your flag guy, it's pretty chalky, at least from what's been going around, but it's Matthew Stafford. Right now his current ADP's 10th round, about QB 13. He's going around. He's got, he's below guys like Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, Carson Wentz, who I would take above all 3 of those guys, certainly. His 16-game pace, keep in mind he only played 9 games last year. 16-game pace was just 2 yards shy of 5,000 yards, 38 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. That's absolutely wild. Darrell Bevel let him throw last year when they had no semblance of any consistent run game. And then, you had Darrell Bevell, who, if you look back to when he was in Seattle, he always had that workhorse in Marshawn Lynch. When Lynch had that injury, I believe it was a sports hernia, I believe in 16, they scaled back and just let Russell Wilson take the reins. So now it's a similar situation in Detroit where you don't know what you really have from Swift as of yet, as far as the semblance of a running game. So they're just going to let Stafford throw, and they've got definitely weapons to let him throw the ball around. Hawkinson, Galladay, Marvin Jones, Danny Amendola in the slot. You've got Swift, who's capable out of the backfield. Kerryon Johnson, should he be able to, see some time on the field. So I see no reason why, just like Daniel Jones, why Stafford can't be a top 6 or 7 guy if he plays, 16 games. That's he's going at an immense value, 10th round. Those are the guys that I'm looking at in my argument to why I'm never really drafting a quarterback early, especially in redraft.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up taking Stafford as my quarterback 2 in the Scott Fish Bowl in the 4th round and was very happy to get him there. Let's see. So he was the 14th quarterback off the board, and I got him as my QB2. And then I actually doubled back in the 10th and picked up Marvin Jones. So, I mean, it's a fun stack that I think, in the NFC North just has atrocious pass defenses. I think, the NFC North wide receivers have one of the best schedules this year across the board. So, yeah, just give me a piece of that offense. Like you said, it's kind of chalky in a way to go with Stafford because he's kind of been talked about, but just because it's chalky doesn't mean it's not right. I mean, he's kind of been a hot name for a reason this offseason.
Yeah. I also think it's interesting talking about him being chalky and, to the fantasy Twitter community who kind of gets hyped on people and whatnot. Stafford's there, but I think in home leagues, as we get closer, Stafford is just going to be this forgotten man that a lot of people just look at 2019 stats and see him really far down there and forget about his back injury and all those things. So the one thing I'm curious about is they obviously spent on Swift. To me, that was partially because they're not convinced on Kerryon's health, but having that 1-2 punch, do you think that Bevel is going to move back harder towards a run-first approach? And then obviously that opens up Stafford for the play action and whatnot, which he thrives on. But I'm just wondering if his attempts are going to drop.
I'm going to say no, and I'd have to go back and double-check this stat, but like the Lions over the last couple of years just really haven't been a great rushing team. Mm-hmm. And, does adding Swift fix all of that instantly? Maybe. I mean, he's obviously super talented. For the longest time in the offseason, he was not the consensus 101 in non-superflex rookie drafts, but he was there. I mean, he was up there with everybody, but I still think that team is just going to throw. I mean, that's just kind of what they do. And I don't really have anything to base that off of. That's kind of more of just the gut feeling, being a Packer fan in the NFC North and watching the Lions play for a lot of years. Yeah, I mean, could just be hopeful thinking, but I still think they're going to be pretty pass heavy.
No, I think you are right. Sorry. I'm pretty sure that their last 100-yard rusher was like Javid Best or some crazy stat.
Yeah, forever ago. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Kevin, you were going to say.
Oh, just going to say, even if they do scale back a little bit, you got to figure he's at least a bankable 4,000 yards. He's probably a bankable 28 to 32 touchdowns. It's still going to put him at QB 12 at least. So even if they do scale back, if they do find a running back finally in Detroit, I don't think it's going to affect Stafford that much. At least it's not going to put too much of a dent in his numbers. You're still going to have a QB1, and when all is said and done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. I mean, I think we all like him. All would be happy to have him. So I think I probably have also a pretty polarizing pick here. So this isn't just homerism. I've talked about him probably on every freaking episode we've done, but I absolutely love Jimmy Garoppolo. I think at the value, so he's QB 21 going right now at the end of the 13th, going into the 14th round. A lot of people are going to maybe take him as their QB 2 if they want to take 2 of them. I personally am very happy to wait, take him as my QB 1, come right back around and get somebody right behind him. And ultimately, this comes down to a lot of people don't like Garoppolo because he was very up and down. He had his games against the Cardinals, which people point to, where he had 4 touchdowns and he was amazing. But then a lot of other games, he got 1 touchdown because they're such a run-heavy offense. Well, in most seasons, the number one rushing attempts like team ends up, getting closer towards the mean. They start passing more and start rushing a little bit less. Maybe we already talked about Mostert wanting a potential trade. If he does get traded, does that change how much they're going to rush? Who knows? To me, the upside of Jimmy G is MVP. My buddy is actually going to place a bet for us. We each put $50 down. We're doing a $100 bet. Jimmy G, I think it was like plus 3,500 for him to be the MVP. And while that sounds absolutely crazy for what he did last year, the reality is it's a Kyle Shanahan offense. He knows how to scheme people. A lot of these other guys, especially Daniel Jones and Matt Stafford, they're great at throwing the ball and finding people downfield and whatnot. Jimmy G is not going to be required to do that. They have the yak of all yak teams. They have Debo, they have Kittle, they just took Brandon Ayuk in the first round, who was a yak master. They have all of their running backs who pretty much all of them can catch, and they're going to start getting healthy. They didn't have Jalen Hurd. They didn't have Trent Taylor. They're both coming back. Yeah, Debo had an injury, and while that does suck, I don't particularly think that Debo is going to be gone for more than, at most all of September. At best, he's gone for a couple games, and hopefully he comes back, no problem. They did lose Joe Staley in the offseason, but they somehow managed to trade a third and a fifth. And they got Trent Williams to replace Joe Staley, who's freaking amazing on it. Also Joe Staley, I don't think you can ever just replace who he is and what he is for the offense, but that's me as more of a homer talking about him. So I'm very excited to see what Jimmy can do. I think he's going to surpass the QB 21. At worst, you're taking him so late that it makes no difference. At that point, if you come out and he falls flat in the first few weeks, fine. You start streaming QB as you may even be your intention. They have an amazing first 3 weeks. I think they play the Giants, the Jets, and the Cardinals in the first 3 weeks. I'm always going to bet on that and just see what I can do from there.
Yeah, I love it. I love, just getting a piece of the Shanahan offense. Like, you're buying into the system, like you said. And, whenever anybody talks about, even like Ayuk going there as a rookie, people said, well, he was not really like all that productive, or, he may not flash very well, or whatever the reason is. I'm like, I'm not buying the player, I'm buying the system. Because if there's any coach that knows how to get exactly what he can out of his players in a system, like, it's going to be Shanahan. He's going to make them successful. So yeah, I'm definitely on board with that.
Yeah, as far as like a late round quarterback, I have no problem with Jimmy G because he's going to be consistent. He doesn't have a lot of really bad weeks. I do worry a little bit about if Deebo Samuel's going to be ready for week 1, but they've got guys around there that are in that system. They have the Kendrick Bournes, they should have the Trent Taylors, whatever Jalen Hurd becomes this year, and obviously George Kittle. So they've got guys around, and that system's great. It's a machine, and it's just going to keep running. And yeah, I have no problems with Jimmy G. As a back end guy that could sneak into the top 12, and that MVP bet, by the way. There are many worse bets you can make than Jimmy G for MVP, honestly.
Josh Allen's like at the same value, and I don't see a world in which Josh Allen is able to like get the same MVP odds. He's just not the type of quarterback. At least Jimmy can throw, and he'll randomly put up 400-yard games, string a few of those together, and all of a sudden you got something going. One thing before we move on to running backs, I just realized these 3 quarterbacks, Stafford, Garoppolo, and Daniel Jones, I have a 1 QB dynasty league. It's like my favorite dynasty league. I have all 3 of these quarterbacks on my roster.
Oh, nice.
So, I have to debate. I have Kirk Cousins on there, even though it's a 1 QB, because I'm waiting to drop 1 or 2 of them. And I've debated all offseason if I'm going to drop 2 of them or not. And now I'm like, I'm just going to go. I'll cut Cousins and roll with these guys and see who gets some upside. So
I like it.
I will add one more thing before we do hop into running backs. The last running back, thanks to Club Fantasy FFL on Twitter, by the way, for this in the chat. It was Reggie Bush in 2013, his last 100-yard rusher.
Jeez,
that's absolutely astounding.
Oh my!
You even said that, and I forgot that he was even on the Lions.
I did too for a little bit, but I forgot he had. Was it Kevin Smith on there too? Was it that in the Joik Bell days?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man,
where Joik Bell and Shane Vereen were my mid-round picks du jour.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
All
So
right, Kevin, why don't you take us into running backs?
well, we're gonna go into running backs with someone. He's my RB2 in Scott Fish, Todd Gurley. Now, Todd Gurley comes over to Atlanta. Right now, he is being drafted as RB15. According to the Fantasy Football Calculator, it's about third round or so. He finished RB14 last year. Despite running behind Pro Football Focus's second worst offensive line. And he was tackled behind the line of scrimmage on 21% of his carries, which I believe was bottom 5, if I'm not mistaken. As far as his backups, I mean, you're looking at Ito Smith, you're looking at Kadri Allison, you're looking at Brian Hill, who scare nobody. So I would say a healthy Gurley is ticketed for 300 touches. I think you can take that to the bank. The offensive line is really the determining factor here, because they did spend a first on Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry. You would think you'd see plenty of games. I know they both got hurt at times last year, but them on the right side of that line, you would figure that'd be an upgrade over what the Rams had, which was the second worst offensive line per Pro Football Focus as well. Another thing too is that what the Patriots did in the Super Bowl when they had a 6-1 stack to kind of take McVay's system and take Gurley out of that game. A lot of defenses did that last year to take Gurley out, but yet he still had the highest rushing grade with 8 men stacked in the box since 2018. Also from Pro Football Focus. So I don't think he sees, he's not going to see as many stacked boxes with, Julio and Calvin Ridley and Hayden Hurst in that offense, Matt Ryan throwing the ball out. So all that together, Todd Gurley, should that knee hold up, which he looked really, really good. He looked like old Todd Gurley at times. I don't think it's as much of a big deal as people make it out to be. I think he's still, he could still flash and be a top, 9 to 10 running back in PPR. He's going to get receiving work too. I think they're just going to kind of beat him into the ground as far as touches and see what he can handle. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, I agree. He's not even that old. Like a lot of people keep saying like Todd Gurley's like this old ancient running back who's past his prime, and the knee injury or the supposed arthritis or whatever it might be is going to be a topic of discussion for the rest of his career, probably unless he like finally puts it to rest by having an awesome season. But one of the things that really, I think, hurt him last year from a fantasy production standpoint was they didn't involve him in the passing game nearly as much last year as they did prior. And he was just lethal in the screen game in years prior. And if maybe part of that was, the offensive line, just how poor it was, and they knew they just couldn't run that type of offense, I'm not entirely sure. I think he's a lock for 300 touches, like you said. They're going to get him involved. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I think we're going to start seeing kind of a trend here with some of our flag planting guys as to what offenses we want to be a part of this season.
Definitely. I'm curious, like if you knew Gurley, if the community knew that Gurley was playing 16 games and going to get the the normal full workload that you would expect for a bell cow back. Is RB14 even that just sounds so low, right? Everybody would have him around, I don't know, RB 6 to 9 type thing, somewhere in that range. Everyone's just hedging their bet about his knee. And it's like, and I've heard this a lot. Don't most football players have some sort of arthritis, probably in some joint? I mean, I don't know that based off of anything. I just you've been pounding your body since you were probably like 11 or 12. You probably have something that's a little jacked up. Yeah, it happens to be your knee. Like that's an important thing as a running back. But I don't know, like a 1-year, $5 million contract to me just screams, let's just do it. Let's see what we're going to do. There's a lot of people taking these contracts to rebuild their value. And this seems like this to me. And he's just going to, I think he's awesome. And it's going to be a fun year to watch.
Yeah, and it's a 1-year prove-it deal if he kind of wants to reset his career here in Atlanta and maybe re-sign or go elsewhere. But like you said, he's still young. In redraft, he's an easy buy for me. If you're a dynasty contender really looking for kind of an extra piece and you can buy him for cheap, absolutely.
Totally.
Yeah, from a redraft standpoint, I don't get why he's going so far down, especially at RB14. I feel like that's almost a dynasty mentality putting him
Mhm.
down that far, because in Dynasty I'm probably, because you don't know what you're going to get 1 to 2 years down the road, but like you said, Sam, as a 1 year buy, if I know I'm going to be trying to contend, absolutely 100% I'm in on Todd Gurley. But in redraft, when it's yearly and seasonal, I just don't get why he's that low. But
Mhm.
I mean, I'll
It's a
take that
different
value.
mindset.
Yeah, I'll take that value all day long.
I think the O-line in Atlanta to me is very miscast. I think that both of their first round picks ended up getting injured during the season.
Yeah,
Like,
I think
was
Lindstrom
really
got hurt early, I believe.
and McGarity, something like that. Also, I think got injured, and so I mean, it's the type of thing. Like, it's like, for me, I was so hyped on them that I think of the Falcons offensive line as a post-hype sleeper, whether or not other people do. I see this as the type of thing where we're going to have this explosion. Plus, I think we're on the upswing of Matt Ryan's like zigzagging, seesawing. Like, he's either,
It's an even year.
Yeah, I was going to say it isn't even
exactly.
Yep.
He's either
We're good.
top 5 or he's below 15.
Yep. It's crazy. Like, it shouldn't be predictive, but it kind of is.
It's so weird, but
Mhm.
they do things different in the South. All right, Sam, take us away with your running back flag.
Yeah, this one's been fun. So I kind of picked this guy for a number of reasons. I had done an article recently on this running back as to why I feel you should buy high, and that's kind of an angle I've been taking for a couple of pieces over the last few months. Is everyone always tries to find the next value. Buy a guy before everyone's high on him, and you can get him for cheap, and he pays off value right away. But I always like to try to be in that win now window for Dynasty as much as I can, unless I either willingly tear my team down and rebuild, or I'm just, ravaged by injuries. But to kind of try to stay in that win now window, you have to kind of pay up for guys that are expensive now, but may still increase in value. You don't have to buy a penny stock right away. I mean, you can buy something that's expensive now, and it'll still be worth more a year later. So for me, it's Miles Sanders. And I know he's kind of been a hot button topic over the last couple of months. And I get the narrative of Doug Peterson only uses a running back by committee approach. I kind of took a look at that right away as soon as I started looking into Miles Sanders here a little bit more. So I wanted to look back and say, okay, over Doug Peterson's coaching and offensive coordinating career, which has been 7 years long, the best running back he's ever worked with, in my opinion, from a pure talent perspective, is Jamal Charles in 2 years in Kansas City. So in 2013 and 2014, he worked with Jamal Charles. But since then, here was the running back that Doug Peterson had that received the most work. Sherkandrick West, Ryan Matthews, LeGarrette Blount, Josh Adams, and then now Miles Sanders. And I would put Miles Sanders, from a talent perspective, above every other single one of those guys except for Jamal Charles. So it kind of turns into this argument of, is this his, the way he likes to run an offense where, like, it doesn't matter who the guys are, this is how he's going to do it? Or has it been, I've never really had a guy who could do it, who could handle the workload? And Sanders, very low volume guy coming out of college, having played behind Saquon Barkley. He's a pretty good athlete. He tested really well at the combine. He's got good measurables across the board. I mean, he's physically, he's a great size for a running back. But I think this year's going to be very telling. And, you can look at the splits both with and without Jordan Howard. Those have been tossed around quite a bit. Just kind of as a quick overview, I just had those pulled up very quickly. In the 9 games with Jordan Howard, Sanders averaged almost 11 PPR points, so 10.9. Without Jordan Howard, he averaged over 17, which paced out for 276 PPR points on the season. And again, that was following an injury that wasn't maybe necessarily the team's plan, but he showed that he could still put up that kind of efficient production, both on the ground and, I think more importantly, through the air as a receiver. He really flashed his ability there early on in his career, which is awesome. So he was RB8 over the back half of the year. And even the back half of the year, he was still only getting 63% of the total running back opportunities. So when he was kind of the guy, so to speak, with Boston Scott filling in behind, you look at all the carries and targets that the running backs had on that team, he still only got 63% of them. So some people will kind of point to that and say, hey, look, he was the guy and it was still a committee. He's not going to get workhorse volume, but, workhorses don't exist as much as they used to in the NFL anymore. So when people say, well, somebody else is going to get work. Well, yeah, obviously, no one out there is going to get, 90% of the rushing volume unless you're, one of the top guys.
Yeah.
So if he gets 70% of the work, 65% of the work, that's fine. His ADP has obviously crept up. He's going as running back 8 right now in best ball leagues. He's going near the end of the first round. I mean, so you're spending first round capital on him right now in best ball leagues. But one of the things I've really been kind of curious as to, we have all of the narratives about Peterson, but what has the team done? The team can say whatever it wants to, but, follow the money or follow the team's actions. They didn't draft anybody. They didn't bring anybody in via free agency. Now, there were some rumors that they wanted to. They haven't yet. I mean, I hope they don't sign Raheem Mostert. That would be awful, because that'll probably shoot my whole Miles Sanders argument to the moon. But yeah, I mean, he's the guy right now. And Boston Scott obviously played really, really well last year down the stretch also. But I mean, in my opinion, this is Sanders' backfield, and it's his until he shows that he can't handle it anymore. So I'm all in on that ADP.
Yeah, as far as Miles Sanders, I mean, that's the most telling thing for me, is that they had every opportunity to go get somebody. There's guys, Devontae Freeman, that's out there right now. I know he's got a higher asking price, but as we get going and he's still not on a team, you'd figure his price would come down, but they still haven't made the move as of yet. As of yet. So, but yeah, Miles Sanders, guy, I have no problem getting if I'm at the back end of the first round. I know he's our own Brian Drake, Fantasy Football Hustle, and from Fighting Chance Fantasy. He's pretty much been responsible for driving Miles Sanders ADP up, and especially in best balls. So, Miles Sanders, I have no problem with him. But like you said, Boston Scott's going to get work. What other running back on a team in this day and age doesn't get work?
Right.
You can't expect a guy to get 90-95% of touches in a backfield.
Right. And kind of my last point on that, and this is, kind of in the same vein, but one thing I've kind of struggled with when, discussing either Miles Sanders or other running backs with people is kind of these blanket statements, like you said, of, oh, well, somebody else is going to get work, or he's not going to be a workhorse. It's like, okay, but define what that means. Because if you just throw out kind of this narrative street argument of, well, like you said, but define it. Now, if you can say, okay, he's not going to get more than X amount of touches, he won't be this efficient, give me something tangible to work with. But that's more of a personal preference than anything else.
I get it. I mean, people aren't scared to take Alvin Kamara, and Latavius Murray dips into that. He's getting a percentage of every backfield. I mean, other than CMC, I think everybody is going to be below 90% touches.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's just going to happen.
Cool. Well, I don't even have anything to add. I fully agree with you. I actually wasn't even that high on Sanders. And then Kevin slowly started to sell me on him, and nice. I completely agree. I'm very, very all about him now, and I'm sad that he didn't fall to me in Scott Fish, but that's just the reality of being back on the turn. So I was going to have Raheem Mostert. I will no longer lament that, and we can move on. Strangely enough, I'm just pivoting to another NFC West team, and that's just because Chris Carson to me is just a screaming. You have to say up front, there's the hip injury, and I tend to overlook injuries that I don't know. It's just a weird thing. I tend to overlook a lot of injuries. I don't think it'll be as long lasting. We did have it's Edwin Kevin
Horace,
Horace, and he came on and made me think twice about this. But ultimately, Chris Carson is pretty close to a lock for 300 touches. He has been for a couple of years now. He started to get a lot more targets last year, and I think that'll continue. They did go out and draft DJ Dallas in, I believe, the 4th round, maybe the 6th round. But they've already come out and said he's more of a special teams guy. They did sign Carlos Hyde, and I think that Carlos Hyde's signing is much more of an indictment of Rashad Penny's health, and that he's probably going to be on the PUP, and they wanted to make sure they had someone. There's a lot of those signings going on this year where they're signing. A.J. Dillon always comes to mind whenever I think of Carlos Hyde. The two of them were brought in not to take away from Aaron Jones or Chris Carson, but to make sure that Jamal Williams or Rashad Penny, that they have security there. Again, he finished RB, I guess, depending on your format, 12 to 14 last year. And I don't see any reason for that to change. I'm a huge fan of the Seahawks offense this year, as we'll see later. I believe that they're poised to give Wilson some of the reins, and that is going to open up a little bit more for Chris Carson. you're getting some built-in injury risk, but he's RB21. You're getting him at the end of the third round, going into probably the fourth round even. If it's super flex, you're getting him even later. Like, I'm willing to take him, but you could have him as your RB3 if you start out running back, or even running back, wide receiver, and then getting him as your RB3. Like, to me, that's fantastic value. So hopefully I'm not having blinders on when it comes to his injury risk, but he runs hard. He's like a mini little Marshawn Lynch. So
yeah, I mean, depending with a lot of these guys, I feel like especially, depending on how you build your roster, if you get Chris Carson as your running back 3, I mean, that's stealing to get that kind of almost guaranteed volume on a great offense. Yeah, Kevin, was that you?
That was me. Yeah, Gurley is my RB2 and Carson's my RB3. And
yeah, with how deep the wide receiver position is, grab a quarterback late, tight end, you stream that, whatever. I mean, yeah, there's a very real scenario where you're flexing Chris Carson as your RB3 or something like that and getting just phenomenal, RB1 volume.
Yep. Totally.
Yeah. And my decision in that was actually between James Conner and Chris Carson. And, with just Connor's had injuries, last couple years.
Mm-hmm.
And with kind of a freak injury with Carson, and we don't really know much about it with the hip. I'm going to skew towards that and know that I feel like, with Carlos Hyde, I don't think he's going to be taking too much from Chris Carson, but I think he's a lock for 275 to 300 touches, and he has sneaky receiving upside too. So
yeah. The Hyde signing was more of a football move than it was a fantasy move for an indictment of Carson. I'm fully in agreement there.
I would have been much more nervous if they got Devonta Freeman, to be honest. And
right.
They offered him the 1 year, $5 million, and he turned it down. And I don't know, Carlos is just more one-dimensional. And we'll see what happens. I just think he's the guy to come in and keep him a little bit fresh until Penny's ready to be back. So,
right.
And I love taking Penny very late in drafts. I've said it again, many shows on here. I love taking Penny at the back of your drafts because, who the hell knows? He could be back week 8, and then if something happens to Carson, you just have insurance and for a solid back. But that's a different thing. All right. So we're gonna jump into wide receivers, and I'm actually just gonna lead us off. We're gonna stick with the Seahawks. I love both DK and Tyler Lockett. I actually debated on having Russell Wilson as my guy, just as my quarterback, plant my flag, but he's just so high. I don't like putting players in here that are going to be so high, which is the same reason Kenny G is who I also wanted, but I pivoted to Tyler Lockett. Given I did just say Carson has this lock for this awesome workload, but if something does happen to his hip, that offense is relying on Carlos Hyde. They could take the reins off, and Russell Wilson, I hate him to death in the most loving kind of way. I have so much damn respect. I genuinely believe he is a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. And if they actually gave him the full hey, this is your offense, you go do what you need to do, kind of a Mahomes style, a Breeze style, a Rodgers style, the sky's the limit. And Tyler Lockett is his trusted guy. I think we're getting a Lockett dip because of the injuries that happened last year. I think that DK and he present a wonderful 1-2 punch, and that Lockett has this amazing PPR floor. And he has this. Didn't he lead the NFL in red zone? I really should know this, given that we're doing a podcast. I apologize, but I think he led the NFL in red zone targets last year. And some of his catches are just so amazing. My favorite catch of 2019 was Russell rolling out to the left, and it was a back end zone corner catch by Lockett, and he barely got the 2 toes in, and it was one of the best catches I've ever seen. And I love Lockett. I don't know why people don't. And he is going at your wide receiver 23. He has a very strong chance to finish in the top 15, and you are getting him super late. If you were to go 0 wide receiver and just go heavy running back, take a quarterback, take a tight end, you could pretty much still get Lockett somewhere in the 5th, maybe in the early 6th. And he could be your wide receiver 1. And it's not the most fantastic thing, but he is going to give you solid production most weeks.
I think the thing that people forget about oftentimes is how good he was last year until he had that really scary leg injury. I mean, he was wide receiver 3 on the year from weeks 1 through 9. I mean, so for like 75% of your fantasy season, he was the wide receiver 3 overall, only behind Michael Thomas and Mike Evans. Had that really scary leg injury, missed some time, and then he was essentially like a decoy out in the field. Like he wasn't the same. He just wasn't. Yeah. And so for a guy that was, a top 5 wide receiver pace for over half the season, but yeah, I'm with you. They should just really let Wilson just unwind and just go because he's so talented. I got a chance to see him for a year here in Wisconsin when he played for the Badgers before he could be cleared for the NFL draft. And like you said, I probably don't have quite the level of, loving hate for him as you do being in the same division. But the Seahawks have done enough to the Packers in the playoffs over the last few years where I can kind of relate. But yeah, I mean, he's so talented. Just let him play.
Yeah. We don't talk about that game here. I still haven't watched that game. I'm just gonna skip that.
Yep.
So Tyler Lockett, I mean, I think a lot of his the reason that he's kind of been shoved down into that, with DK Metcalf and with DJ Chark and McLaurin, that kind of tier. I think people are just so hung up on before last year with how efficient he was, and he wasn't getting those targets. He was only getting like 70, 71 targets the last couple of years, and now that he exploded, I get the trepidation with how Seattle, are they going to let Russell Wilson loose? But Tyler Lockett is an absolute stud. I'm starting my projections for this year, and I've got him for 89 catches, 1,100 yards, and 8 touchdowns. I mean, I think Russell Wilson's going to be throwing more than he has with Schottenheimer as OC. I just think that Lockett is a screaming value. And like Gary said, if you go, RB robust, and then you can just take a wide receiver to build around, I totally take Lockett as my one, and then just go from there and just take value after value that slides at the wide receiver position all day. Tyler Lockett's fantastic, and I think he's overshadowed, with DK Metcalf being there too, and he's kind of the forgotten guy. People want to look to the measurables with DK Metcalf and how he's going to be a touchdown magnet, but don't sleep on Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, totally. Sorry, I just ended up getting up on Scott Fishbowl, so while you guys were talking, I was just quickly checking to see who actually went. So
no worries.
All right, man. So Sam, why don't you take us off? Let's go. Let's move on. And who's your wide receiver?
Yeah, so I talked about how I did a buy high piece on Miles Sanders not too long ago. One of the earlier RotoViz pieces I did earlier this offseason, kind of think back in February, I'd have to check, February, maybe early March, was another buy high on Calvin Ridley. And I've been a big fan of his for a long time, ever since he came into the league. And he was just such a phenomenal athlete at Alabama. He's been a great route runner his whole career. So I don't know what they do there at Alabama, but their receivers can just run the best routes. They just do. I mean, it's been great to watch. If you want to say health has been maybe a little bit of a concern for his early on in his career, but I think he's just on the brink right now of just an interruption third year. I want to say it's going to be like a Godwin-like breakout. I'm not saying he's going to produce to that level, but I think we're going to see the same type of just incredible jump in production, because I think so many arrows are pointing in the right direction for him, just as they were for Chris Godwin. All the offseason speak for him, the role he's going to play, the Bruce Arians system, all of those things, and kind of the hype paid off. Like, it came to fruition. All of it did. I think we're kind of in the same boat with Ridley. Before he got hurt last year and went on IR, he was the wide receiver 14 overall from weeks 1 to 14. So he was a borderline wide receiver 1 anyways, even playing across with, one of the most elite wide receivers ever in Julio Jones. So with that being said, people say, okay, well, why would I invest in a team's wide receiver 2 over, you talked about some of those other guys that he's going in a similar range of, like a McLaurin or a Chark, who are the clear wide receiver 1s on their team. But I mean, a 20% market share on the Atlanta Falcons is way better than a 20% market share for some team like the Redskins, who maybe doesn't throw quite as much. So in Ridley's career, no team has averaged more passing attempts per 60 minutes of football than the Falcons. They're the pass heaviest team over the last few years. And you can talk about vacated targets. Hooper's gone, Sanu's gone, Freeman's gone. They involved him in the passing game quite a bit. I think Gurley's going to step in and fill a lot of that running back role. But otherwise, I mean, Julio's going to get he's going to get fed targets. And then Ridley's going to get his because there really isn't a wide receiver 3. And this isn't a knock on Russell Gage, and I think he's maybe a sneaky PPR value. But, I mean, this team is going to get into shootouts. They're going to throw. It's an even year for Matt Ryan, so we got that going for us as well. But, I mean, he's going as the wide receiver 15 right now in best ball. He's going kind of in the middle of the 4th round. I mean, that's a smash for me right there. And I was able to actually grab him in the Scott Fish Bowl, which is awesome. So I love having Ridley on my team. And I grabbed him in the 6th. So it's super flex, so it kind of pushes things down a little bit more. But, yeah, I mean, I think the Falcons are kind of a lock to have, 2 wide receiver 1s this year, very similar to what the Buccaneers did last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as Ridley, because I did a piece too on Fighting Chance Fantasy with Calvin Ridley. Yeah, he's an easy smash for me in the 4th round. I mean, you're talking the team passed 680 something times last year. That defense is terrible. They're going to be throwing. There's no doubt in my mind that if both of those guys are healthy, Julio and Calvin Ridley, I mean, what do you do as a defense? I mean, and then you got Hayden Hurst. They're a tight end too. You got Gurley, who, if he reclaims some of that receiving work that he didn't really have last year, at least in Los Angeles. But with all those weapons there, you can't just key on Julio anymore. You can't bracket him. So the ascension of Calvin Ridley, I know that the Godwin ascension that's been bandied about, and people love to crap on it and everything, but it's a similar situation to that as I can think of. I mean, it's Calvin Ridley is an absolute top 12. If he's healthy, he's going to be his target share, I believe, was 17% last year, which should absolutely go up into the 20s. I would say. I think that's pretty much a lock. I'm all about Calvin Ridley.
Completely agree. He's somebody that I have not been that high on, and just as more and more, literally, like, these are the types of things that just make me higher and higher in him, and just realizing that I think I had bought into the injury dip. And when it comes to that division, there's nothing you can do but try to keep up if you're going to win games. So that's enough. And as much as I want to just believe that Julio is eternal and he's the Frank Gore of wide receivers, that's just not the case. So
yeah, eventually he's gonna wind down. And I know some of the knock on Ridley coming in was his age. He was an older rookie, and I've talked to people about that. And for as much as dynasty players are just enamored with young players and wanting to have as many young assets on their team as they can, that's fine. I mean, I don't care, really. I mean, when I'm trying to build a winning dynasty squad, if I could have Ridley as my wide receiver 1 from his age 25 season to his age 29 season, that's fine. Like, I don't care what age he was when he came out of college. He's great at football. And the age does matter to a point, but for a situation like this, it's not something I'm overly concerned about.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Kevin. You get to do it. Kevin, who is your wide receiver? Planting your flag, #on brand.
On brand.
Oh man, I mean, I could choose from so many guys, but I mean, if you know me, you already know it's Robert Woods. I mean, let's just go into the fact that he's still going as wide receiver 17, which is an absolute travesty to me. But you know what? Let's keep him down there because it's going to provide more value. He's already gone up about a round in calculators ADP from the end of May to now. He's gone up about 14 picks. And he's caught 85 balls the last 2 years. He's gone over 1,100 yards. He's seen 130 targets. And he's still just being slept on, even at, with his own teammate there, Cooper Kupp, which we'll certainly get into that because weeks 1 through 8, Cooper Kupp just absolutely was on fire. He was wide receiver 5 on the field 85% of the time, 21 points per game for fantasy. And Robert Woods in that time frame was a wide receiver 31. So he wasn't doing too great out of the gates. But once the Rams switched to more of a 12 personnel, it's when you started seeing Robert Woods kind of taking over, and Cooper Kupp actually left the field a lot as they started, with that 12 personnel. Robert Woods was wide receiver 10 from weeks 10 to 17. Cooper Kupp was wide receiver 30. So you saw that switch there with the two of them. Cooper Kupp was only on the field 75% of the time and averaged 12.9 points per game. Woods was on the field 92% of the time and averaged 19 points per game. And then you're talking about fantasy playoffs when the Rams had their top 10 usage league wide in 12 personnel. Robert Woods in that time frame was wide receiver 6 and barely came off the field. He played 98% of snaps. And just in that time frame in weeks 10 through 17, Cooper Kupp only saw 2 games over 6 targets. Robert Woods didn't see a game under 9 through that entire stretch. So for this year, their personnel moves, they didn't really draft. I think they drafted a late round offensive lineman. They drafted Bryson Hopkins, which could be the eventual replacement for Gerald Everett. But and then we're talking about red zone targets where you had Tyler Higbee and Cooper Kupp pacing that, and some severe touchdown regression coming for Woods. If he can bridge the gap between those other 2 players, if he can even get up to 6 or 7 touchdowns, why isn't Robert Woods as a top 7-8 receiver, and at minimum? So I don't get the valuation, but at least for right now where I can get him at a value, I'm so happy to take Robert Woods. And I took him at wide receiver 10 in Scott Fishbowl. And I know on the open bar, I threw my team up there, and Gabe had a little something to say about taking him there. But when you're on the turn, you got to take your guys when you can take your guys, or else they're not going to be there. So, but yeah, Robert Woods, I mean, it's no secret if you know me, he's my favorite wide receiver to cover this year.
Sam, your rebuke, your praise, where are you at with this?
Yeah, I'm right in line there. I mean, the top 2, in my opinion, just most disrespected, undervalued wide receivers are Robert Woods and Jarvis Landry. Like all those guys do is produce. It doesn't have to look good, doesn't have to be pretty, but at the end of the day, they're consistent, they're durable, they're dependable, and they just put up fantasy points every single year. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah, totally. Does Van Jefferson make you nervous at all? They're pretty good so far with less than Sean McVay figuring out their wide receiver situation.
I haven't really looked into Van Jefferson enough to know. I mean, I've heard some good things about him. I've heard some maybe not so great things, but college and Devy is not really my area of expertise, and I really haven't. I mean, I've studied the rookie class, but probably not somebody I'm spending early rookie capital on.
Very much, totally agree. All right, well, I mean, Kevin Woods is my wide receiver 1 and Scott Fish 2. So I'm fully converted and wearing the tunics, drinking the Kool-Aid, whatever it is that you need me to do.
Jersey's on the way.
Nice.
It's on the way. But you got the crappy new jersey. I hate their new jersey.
That blue ones with the gradient numbers are nice. Now the bone jersey, that off-white, is gross. But are you kidding me? You don't like that blue jersey?
No, I hate
Gary,
them.
dude.
I think that they're super weird. I think that they were made on just like Photoshop that somebody like made. I don't know.
They might have been.
Hey, what's your football team?
What's up?
What's your football team?
Green Bay Packers.
Okay.
Why do you think I brought him on here, Gary? How many 49ers fans have we had on here?
Man, I should have just stuck with Raheem Mostert. Damn it.
No kidding. You had your chance.
Quarterback, my favorite, plant my flag, Colin Kaepernick. Okay.
What, Tim McKay doesn't do it for you?
All right. Tight ends. Kevin, why don't you take us out?
Oh, you want me to talk again? No.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Actually, Sam, you can go.
No, I was kidding. But Sam, go right ahead, man.
Perfect. Yeah, so I'll wrap up the guys that I'm planting my flag in for 2020. Going right back to the same offense I just finished talking about. So I'm looking at Hayden Hurst, and kind of before I get too far, I was really kind of looking, you guys will get to yours, but I was really kind of looking at your guys, your picks here at tight end as well. So I had to do a little bit more digging, which was fun. So kind of maybe do a little bit more research that maybe I had planned on. I think tight end's kind of in an interesting spot this year, with maybe some of the sneaky depth that will be there. But for me, Hayden Hurst, former first-round pick, great athlete, was on baseball track for a while. So he's kind of an older rookie coming in before he switched over back to football. So the draft capital is there. Went to the Baltimore Ravens, got buried just behind, a better tight end. Mark Andrews is just superior in every way pretty much on that offense. So there really wasn't a knock on Hayden Hurst. He just got outplayed by a teammate, which is fine. But as I mentioned, kind of talking about with Calvin Ridley, how 20% target share on the Falcons is way better than something else. Hurst went from like the most run heavy team in all of football last year to the most pass heavy team in all of football. And he doesn't necessarily have to do or be everything that Austin Hooper was over these past couple of years. He can be, 75% production of what Austin Hooper put up and still finish as a fringe RB1. Now, I was kind of surprised at how much Hayden Hurst's ADP had crept up a little bit. He's being drafted well within, the tight end 1 range. He's going as tight end 9 right now. I think that's fair and appropriate value. I've seen some people, rank him, up into the top 5, 6, just because of the sheer volume on that offense and the targets that are going to be left behind. A little bit of more digging that I did on Hurst. I was kind of surprised. Shouldn't be surprised, I guess, but he's more athletic than I thought he was, simply because I didn't really get a chance to see him on the field a lot in Baltimore. But he runs 4.67, which is 80th percentile for a tight end. He's got an 81st percentile speed score. I mean, so he's good in open field. I mean, if he gets a seam, he gets up the sideline or up the middle. I mean, DBs are going to have a hard time not only, they'll catch him, but bringing him down is going to be another issue. But there's that chance of what time does he have this offseason with everything going on to form some continuity, to build a rapport with Matt Ryan, kind of fit into the scheme of the offense. But I just think for him, I think he's a great athlete. That draft capital, I think, is going to start to pay dividends. And just the transition to suddenly having really no passing volume to a ton. And as you said, Gary, any way to keep up in that division, you're just going to have to score a lot of points. And he's going to have a role. He just is. I mean, he might be the number 3 pass catcher on that team behind Julio and Ridley. So I like him where he's going. I think he's a good value there at tight end. I probably wouldn't take him any higher than tight end 9. But again, depending on how my draft falls, if I'm kind of maybe punting on tight end and an early run goes and I got to take him later, that's fine. But yeah, if I can get a piece of that offense, I definitely want to.
100% agree. And I think that trading the second round pick for him spoke volumes to what they expect from him, what they saw in him. Like you said, he was a first round pick. I love the move for the Falcons. I love the move for the Ravens. I love the move for fantasy. Just everything about it to me was just like, this is perfect. And it gives at least a few years. And I don't see a downside to drafting him, especially where you're getting, if you're going higher than tight end, I don't know, if you're going higher than tight end, like 6, 7, 8, like maybe that's a little bit of a, that's a push in value. Mm-hmm. Anything below that's amazing. And it is weird how quickly his ADP just seemed to like skyrocket in the last 3 weeks or so, as if like people just all of a sudden were like, oh, hey, Hayden Hurst is here. Whereas before it was like, oh, you could get him as like your 12, 13. He was this year's Mark Andrews type thing, ironically.
Yeah, like, Hayden Hurst is good or something. He'll go from ADP of 14 to now he's like 9, like in that. But yeah, Hayden Hurst is gonna. He was woefully underutilized in Baltimore, and now he's going to go to Atlanta, where he's going to be surrounded by talent. There's no doubt. I mean, I think he's a slam dunk. At least a tight end 1. With those guys around him, I see no reason why he shouldn't be. We'll see what happens, but it's curious to see just how high guys are. Like in my Scott Fishbowl draft, he went in the 3rd round. He went in the 3rd round. He went 3.7. So that was a little bit of an eye opener. I don't hate the talent, but you I guess get your guy, but you could have probably gotten him in the 5th or 6th if you really wanted him that bad.
On the flip, though, like if you just give him Hooper's numbers, how high is he drafted? Hooper, like full 16 game Hooper. He rivals Kittle and Kelsey, right? I think he's close to 1,300 yards and 8 to 10 touchdowns or whatever. Like he deserves to be up there.
Yep. I mean, that's really shooting your shot. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, he'd be in that Ertz tier for me, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm actually going to go second, if that's okay, Kevin. There's a specific reason, and that's I only just now realized that we happened to take the first 3 tight ends of the 2018 draft in order. And so the second tight end taken in the 2018 NFL draft was Mike Gesicki. Spark freak, considered to be one of, if not the most athletic tight ends in the NFL. But I hear that about so many players. Like there's Kelsey, there's Kittle, there's Cook. Even though he's older, there's Jonnu. Like all these guys are just, there's so much athleticism. But Gesicki constantly gets referred to as one of the most athletic players in the NFL. I think he's a 99% SPARQ score. Last year, so ultimately like the good and the bad, right? We have Fitzpatrick. When he came in, then Gesicki started to do better. It wasn't as if there was anything crazy. He had one game with 6 catches, another with 5 for 79 and touchdown. But really, it was the second half of the season. He had 5 touchdowns in the last 5 games, or last 6 games. If he can continue to do something kind of similar and become a little bit more integrated, then I think that's where the value comes in and taking him as the tight end 14. We're always looking for the next Mark Andrews, the next George Kittle, whoever it may be. And Gesicki has a good, strong ability to do that. Whether it's with Fitz or if Tua comes in at some point, we know that Tua is hyper accurate, could, rely on his tight end a little bit there with the Dolphins. They have a good offense. I'm a big fan of the Dolphins as a whole. And I just think that Gesicki has that possibility to elevate himself. His catch count for the season is a little bit concerning, but, he had – He had Josh Rosen for a bit. He was a second-year tight end. And like my biggest thing, and maybe this is why we all happen to take 2018 tight ends, is I really don't buy into a tight end until they're year 3. I fully subscribe to the third-year breakout for tight ends. I think that year 1, you're learning how to block and how to compete at a level where you're going against grown-ass men, not just college kids. I think year 2, you're learning how to catch in addition to refining your blocking skills. And I think year 3 is where things really click. And so I'm happy to buy in on that. As you guys probably seen, I like to put my money on guys that are going to be going a little bit later and think that they're going to pay off. And Gesicki, to me, unfortunately, he just went a few picks before I did in Scott Fish. Otherwise, I would actually be taking him. But I think he's going to be my guy that I'm going for in almost all my leagues. And just at worst, you're going to maybe get, 6 to 8 touchdowns. Really, what else do you really want outside of the top 3 tight ends? They're going to have the yards. Everything else is going to be, I want touchdown upside.
Yeah, I mean, the dude was built in a lab. You just look at his metrics, and they're all off the charts. I mean, that's been fun just to follow anyways. So, Gary, question for you. Are you nervous at all about his splits both before and after Preston Williams went down with injury? Because if you kind of look at his splits with and without, he obviously kind of took off and scored a lot of his touchdowns in the second half of the season. With Williams coming back, are you worried how that impacts his role at all? Or do you think just his overall growth as a player heading into his third year? And I totally agree. Tight ends take the longest to develop really with any skill position. Does that kind of offset Williams joining the team again on offense?
No, it doesn't. Williams specifically doesn't. And just this is kind of looking to the future crystal ball stuff. Like Jordan Howard makes me more nervous because their running game was just so atrocious last year. I mean, Fitzpatrick was their yardage leader on the ground type thing. That makes me nervous that they might run a little bit more in those tight, in the 10 zone, 5 zone. Ultimately, though, I think that the offense is just going to get better and better. Devonta Parker clicking with Fitzpatrick. I personally believe Fitzpatrick is going to play all of next season. So I'll put that out there.
I do too.
Okay. And so with that said, I think that, Preston's coming off of an ACL, I believe. And so it'll take a little bit. He's still also learning, his second year and whatnot. And it's not as if like he was this high prospect. I think he was a 5th round pick. It's nothing crazy. I think that if I'm Fitzpatrick, again, going very narrative, which I tend to do, like I'm going to go to Devontae, who like I made him a top 10 wide receiver and my big ass tight end. And we'll figure out the rest around there. So
yep.
I'm not too nervous about it. The division always terrifies me, right? But, Devonta Parker showed that he can even shut Stephon Gilmore down.
It's true. It was great.
And another thing, too, with Gesicki, why not just be creative with Changalia there and just throw him in the slot? I mean, you throw Preston Williams out there, throw Devontae Parker, throw Gesicki in as a big slot. You mean you've wanted to make Albert Wilson a thing for so long. You want, pick up Alan Hearns off the scrap heap? Why not just go all out, go Gesicki in the slot and just be your big slot and just dominate over linebackers, dominate over safeties? Why not? I mean, he had almost 90 targets last year. I mean, I would say that's a pretty good floor for him. I can't see him going too much over that.
Yeah.
But for a guy that you're going to be drafting outside of the top 12 for by and large, there's nobody with a bigger upside than Gesicki outside of that top 12 for me.
Maybe one more.
Yeah, maybe one more.
Maybe one more. So who's your tight end?
So my tight end, he went to school just south of me. He was a jackrabbit, Dallas Goedert. So Dallas Goedert, tight end 16 right now in ADP. You can pretty much get him whenever you want him in the 10th, 11th, down to the 12th, 13th round. But last year, when they had all those injuries in Philadelphia with the wide receivers, having to play a lot of 12 personnel, the most in football last year. Tight end 10 last year, 58 catches, 600 yards, five touchdowns, and 87 targets. He was Pro Football Focus's sixth best tight end last year. They're going to keep him on the field because since 2018, he was the second highest tight end run blocking grade from PFF, ahead of George Kittle, who we talk about as being this absolute rogue raider of a run blocker at tight end. So, I mean, Dallas Goedert, you're talking about, if they don't have Alshon Jeffrey to start the season, who knows with Deshaun Jackson now, with everything coming out in the news, what they're going to do with him, if they even do anything. Plus, he has injury risk too. You're talking Jalen Reagor, who's on the outside, that they have to get a rapport with Carson Wentz. You still got those two tight ends in Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. And then you've got just a misfit toys around him. You've got Goodwin that they got from the Niners. You've got still Greg Ward hanging around. So I think they're going to be targeting those two tight ends as much as they can, and just seeing what they can kind of get out of the wide receiver position. So I think Goddard's in a really, really good spot to be a top 12 tight end last year. And he's going to be on the field, obviously blocking. Looking at a stat I found with his yards after catch. Now, Ertz had his 88 catches last year for only 255 yards after the catch, and in Goddard's 58 catches, he had 60 more yards after the catch. He's just an athletic matchup nightmare that you hate to see in front of you. I don't see any reason why, if they can't figure out that wide receiver position, why he can't get 100 targets and catch 65, 70 balls. Yeah, absolutely.
It's such a tight end friendly system too, which is awesome. Yep. So you have a guy who's already an athletic tight end who can catch, who can block, and you put him in a system that utilizes the tight end very well. I mean, it's perfect. I love it.
Man, 100 targets. It's
spicy, but you know what? If something happens to Zach Ertz, is he not in that Mark Andrews tier?
Yeah. I see it. I feel like anytime that I draft Goddard, it's never my tight end one. It always has to be my tight end two.
And that's perfectly fine too.
Yeah. I think in a lot of leagues, you're not drafting two tight ends. I don't know. Goddard is just one of those guys I can never find myself drafting, is someone that I'm always going to pick up off waivers after Ertz has been healthy for 5 or 6 weeks. And you're like, I'm never going to start this guy. But he has the upside, like you said, to be huge. And this year, who knows what the hell is going on with that wide receiver core. So hopefully he'll be more integrated. If you're getting him as a tight end too, at least you know that you have waiver wire, someone to cut off the bottom of your roster if you need to. But I don't want to diminish your guys so much. But
that's all right. Sleep on him. That's fine.
I was just thinking about it. So the 2018 draft went Hayden Hurst, Gesicki, so Hayden Hurst in the first, Gesicki in the second, then Goddard, and then in the third, the Ravens also took Mark Andrews. That was all one draft. That is one hell of a tight end draft.
That's a good tight end class. Wow.
Damn. That's crazy.
I forgot Andrews was a third, I believe, right? Was he a third?
Yeah. I have actually one question for Sam. And just because I noticed that you use best ball rankings and best ball kind of ADP-ish. Mm-hmm. And why do you specifically do that? Because I don't think a lot of listeners necessarily would always think to do that.
One of the reasons I use it a lot in the off season is because there's so many more drafts and so much more data. So I just have a lot larger of a sample size. There aren't really a lot of redraft ADPs in, February, March, April. Not a whole lot of dynasty startup. I mean, there are some dynasty startups that happen kind of year round whenever people either start new ones, either before or after the NFL draft in April or anytime. But there's best ball drafts going on pretty much all the time. So at least to get a larger sample size.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's redraft then because it's single season best ball. There is dynasty best ball, but yeah, for me it was just the sample size.
I think it's really smart. Do you have a go-to that you use for their ADP?
Just on RotoViz, we just use the FFPC best ball. So,
which if anybody doesn't know, for FFPC, it's actually a great site because you actually have people that tend to be spending a good amount of money. There are people that actually think about this because it's not just a free league or a $10 league or a $20, like my boss wants me in this league. It is, up to like $350, if not more. So it's people that are very dedicated and thinking about this, just like we are 365 pretty much every damn day of the year, even the day after the Super Bowl. You're already starting to think about the next year's fantasy. So
yep. And it's way better than going, doing a mock draft on a site where a guy's going to take Tim Tebow first overall and jump out of the thing. Like, you're getting actual usable data. So that's absolutely smart, and definitely one of the best ways to go about it, at least to kind of form ADP and get your trends and seeing what's going on up to the minute.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Sam, why don't you just remind everybody where they can find you, and then Kevin will take us out.
Yeah. So again, guys, thank you so much for having me on. This was a ton of fun to go over some guys that we're all hopefully going to be pretty high on this year. So like I said at the beginning of the show, you can find my work over at RotoViz, and you can find me over on Twitter at @SWallace_FF.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. This was a blast. Somehow it's an hour and 15 minutes. I honestly, time flew by today, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, thank you so much. Go Pat, go. And we'll see what happens with that. Thanks to we had a pretty rousing chat in here so thank you guys for checking us out. So I'm Kevin Tompkins, Gary Haddow, and for Sam, thank you for checking out Fighting Chance Live, and y'all have a great night.
Thank you.